There were a normal sunny day in Ponyville, and since school was had a summer break, and there was a day when all the other students were going home, especially Smolder, Osalis, and Silverstream had already returned home. But Yona, she had asked Twilight if she could stay in Ponyville, because she preferred want to stay there just for this summer break. And she had already asked her family for permission, and she had their permission, and even in the writing, and Twilight allowed to stay, so she was going to stay at this castle. And Gallus, and since he had no family back home in Griffinstone, he was also allowed to stay in Ponyville after he had asked Grandpa Gruff for permission. And since both of them were going to stay in Ponyville for the summer, both decided maybe to do something together, like anything. For the first few days after the summer break had started, it was just a rainy day, so both were stuck inside the castle all day. So the first day they had nothing to do. And Gallus, he was just in his room and sleeping most of part of the day. And Yona, she was just walking around in the castle to explore, to see what else there could have been there. But on the second day, both Gallus and Yona decided to maybe do something else, maybe play some games or read something just to make the day go faster. And they decided to play some cards, and after that they read some do books. But on the third day, it was sunny back again. So both decided to go outside to do something. And of course, Yona, she wanted to do something more fun, but Gallus had no idea what to do. So he decided why not go to play some bowling since the bowling alley was open. So both decided to go there. And this would be Yona's first time to play bowling. And Gallus, he had to teach Yona how to play the game, mostly what the rules are, how to play it. And at first she had a very hard time to play it, but after a few tries she managed to get the hang of it. But there was something that Yona didn't know about Gallus. For the past 6 months, Gallus had a secret crush on her. He had always wanted to tell her directly, but since the school has been so much busy lately with school field trips, a lot of homeworks, and a lot of holidays they had, and which made it almost impossible for him to even have just a long moment. Especially when all their friends were back in school, they were even much harder for him to get any single moment alone, just with her. For even Gallus wanted to tell her, but he hoped to be able to tell her sometimes during the summer break. Even he knew that maybe she doesn't like him back in the same way. But he was prepared for that response from her. And he decided to tell her right after they had played bowling, because he decided to take her to Sugar Corner to maybe get her something to eat. And they played for about almost 2 hours, and after it was done, it turns out Yona had a great time. She had 180 points, while Gallus had around 190. So even there were only 10 points between them, but we both had a great time. At Sugar Corner, both were just relaxing, small talk about school subjects that they enjoyed with. And that's especially Yona. She enjoys fashions, classes with Rarity, and even art, and most of all, the fashion. Even Gallus, he admits that he enjoys the gymnastics with Rainbow Dash as a teacher. And even he actually enjoys art. It turns out both of them were actually quite good at it. And Gallus then asked Yona if if there was some pony that she had an interest of, maybe a student or some pony back home or anyone else. At first, Yona didn't know what to tell. She started to blush and said that she had a crush on some pony. And Gallus then asked back carefully if there was some pony that he knew, or at least both of them both of them knew, and all she could just do was just nod it. And he asked her, who was it? But Yona, she didn't tell, because she felt so scared how he would react. So all she said that she couldn't tell because it was a secret. Even Gallus wanted to know, but he wouldn't want to push her to the limit to ask her. Even he asked her over and over and over. It wasn't going to happen so well. So he dropped the subject and then asked how she likes being Ponyville rather from being back in Yakistan. Even though you have a lot of snow in Yakistan, but she actually enjoys being in Ponyville. Have a lot of friends, a lot of new things to do, like playing bowling, go to a cafe or a restaurant to eat something, or just go to the park to relax. They don't have that much things in back home. And she had the same thing for Gallus. Well, since Gallus didn't have any particular family back home, he didn't even that Stone is part of him, but he said, it doesn't feel like home to me anymore. And ever since he came to Ponyville for the start of school, he felt more home in Ponyville rather than in Stone. So both of them had something in common. But then, Gallus remembered what he had planned to do. And he then said that he remembers when he asked her if she had a crush. But he then said since she admits that she has some pony that she likes very much, he admits that the same thing. And he then was going to reveal exactly. But then Pinkie Pie showed up and gave them some more cupcakes for free. And that stopped the moment, because Yona and Pinkie Pie started talking, and they talked for maybe for a few minutes before Pinkie Pie had to go back to work. And then Yona then asked Gallus what he was going to tell, but he said nothing. There was nothing important. Yona just looked at him with a curious look, but after that, he didn't mention it. Back at the castle where Yona and Gallus came back, it was only early afternoon. Yona was in the library reading some books, while Gallus was at his room, just looking at the roof silently, until he hears a knock on the door. It was Spike. Spike then had asked if he could come in, which he did, and at first Gallus didn't say much. But Spike tried to break the silence. But Spike then admits that he had to talk to him about something, because even Spike had noticed something was up with Gallus. So Gallus then admits that there was something on his mind, and he asked Spike not to tell anyone about this, especially Twilight. And he promised. And then he admits that he had a crush on Yona. And he was going to tell her, but then something came up and he said to her, that's nothing important. Spike just looked at him and said, you had to tell Yona. You had to admit to her. If you don't, your feelings will be unanswered. Believe me, I have. Because Spike had recently told Rarity how he felt for her. And it turns out back then, Rarity were a bit surprised and they didn't talk to each other for nearly 2-3 days, but only 3 days after, Rarity admits to him that she likes him back in the same way. So now Spike and Rarity had begun to dating. And even Gallus knew that Spike had a point. So he took his advice, so he stepped down to the library to find Yona alone. Twilight had left the castle in almost 5 minutes, a half hour earlier, because she had to do something at the market. Then Gallus told her exactly how he felt for her, and she was blushing a lot more than it before. Then she realized her secret crush was actually Gallus. That surprised him, but he thought maybe it could have been Sandbar or something else, maybe like Spike or something, but that surprised him. But then Gallus asked, why didn't he tell him before? And that turns out then that Yona were scared how Gallus would react and that he would say, probably laugh at her or something. But Gallus, he said he wouldn't laugh at her. He would have understood. And even if that he didn't have the same feelings for her even then, maybe he would say that he would still be there for her as a friend, nothing as support her. But after they talked for a few minutes, Gallus asked if she wanted to go out with him on a first date, which she said yes. And he decided maybe that they could go to this comedy club where they had been before. So she said yes. So they both decided to go there this evening. So when Twilight came back, they told her what's going to happen. And then, to their response, Twilight wasn't much as surprised, because she had a feeling something was different between them. She thought maybe that could have been the reason why they decided to be staying in Ponyville for the summer. And both Yona and Gallus looked at each other. How could she know that? Because that was actually the same reason they had. And that surprised even more than us. So the rest of the evening, they actually went to the comedy club and both had so much laughing. Listened to all the comedies, stand-up comedies, just having a great time. And throughout the entire summer, both went on several more dates, having romantic dinners at the castle, picnics at the meadows, at the park, and just having a great time. But then the summer was over, and school was back on. But when their friends came back, none of them had no idea. Not even only for except Sandbar, who knew about this. But he had promised not to tell their friends, because they decided to do them themselves. And it was a big shock for all their friends. But especially Ocellus. She was so excited all of this. And throughout the entire rest of the year, their friends were so happy for them. And they even went more dates, but there was just one big thing they needed to do. Because before Heartswarming Eve holiday was even arriving, Yona had asked her parents again if she could be staying in Ponyville. And the first they were asking why suddenly she wanted to stay in Ponyville for the holiday rather than being with her family. So she admits something that has been happening over the past few months when she was back at school. After several times explaining to them, both her parents and her siblings were a bit surprised. But they admit that at least she is happy. And then her mom, then made her daughter even more shocked. She couldn't invite Yona. Yona could invite Gallus to celebrate the Yak's holiday instead. When she met this Gallus, he was really surprised that her parents would admit to let him to spend the holiday there. So, but he said that he could do it. So the rest of the holidays, Gallus were the first a bit skeptical how this holiday would work because he didn't want to make any mistakes to upset, especially her family or any of the Jacks made by some little a simple mistake or. But he even told Jonas' parents that he didn't know much about their particular holiday, what we were doing on it. And that didn't shock them, that didn't surprise them that much because since Gallus were only a griffin. And but but her parents weren't that much angry. They were understanding because he had never heard much about their particular. Only he did mention that Yona had only mentioned about her family's holiday tradition, but nothing more much detailed. But he was also said that he was eager to learn more about the Yak holiday. And he even told them about his family, well, about his kind's holiday, the Blue Moon Festival. And even though Yona and her family were very happy to see her happy. So for the next year afterwards, Yona and Gallus spent some time in Griffinstone, even when they didn't have any family there. But luckily, they had at least one friend they could stay with, and that was Gabby. Gabby had her own house, which they could stay in. She didn't mind to let them stay there for a couple of days or a week or so. And even there weren't much as. At first, Jonas then saw there was nothing much like Ponyville or Yakistan in Griffinstone. But she was interested to learn more about the Griffin's culture, their traditions, or anything. But when they came back to Griffinstone, a lot of things has changed. The houses were mostly like new. The entire town was almost like it has been rebuilt. The castle has been reopened. It had a new king, and the library was rebuilt. Everything was back as before they lost their golden idol. And for the next couple of years after all of this, Yona had started working for Rarity at her boutique as an assistant. Gallus, he had actually started working for Twilight when she became the next ruler of Equestria. He had then been asked by Twilight if he wanted to be a royal guard. Because over the couple of years back, he had been proving how to be brave, strong, fast, and loyal, all the things that be needed to be a guard. And he accepted to be a guard. But then, something did happen. Twilight even announced to Gallus, that he would not only be a guard, he would be the new captain of the Royal Guard. That shocked him, but he felt brave, confident, but most of all, very proud. And it happened almost about a year after that he became the captain of the Royal Guard, and that Jonas started working for Rarity. They had actually been on a date when Gallus had his permission to leave from his duties. Even he lived now in Canterlot while Jonan lived in Ponyville. But that didn't stop their relationship. They only made it stronger. But when he went on his leave, he actually had asked Jonah to marry him, which she said yes immediately. The wedding was held several weeks later. Yona had asked Ocellus to be her bridesmaid and Sambar to be Gallus' best man, and even Yona's family could not be more proud. They both had a great time at the party, and it's just amazing time for them. All of them were so excited to see their daughter be married to true love, and even then, just seeing their daughter so happy made her parents feeling so proud. And later, they even went to Las Peñas for a whole week for their honeymoon, which they all had a great time with, enjoying some of the rides and some of the magical shows and just having a great time. Even though that both of them had been wondered, will they be happier if they had a family of their own? Even Jonah had one the wish to have that. And one day she is something that she needed to tell Gallus. When Gallus was back in Ponyville for a visit, she admits something to him, and that he also noticed something was a bit off with Yona. She was more a bit rounder than usually, and then she admits to him that she was pregnant. That shocked him, but he wasn't upset. He actually is so excited that he flew right up in the air and screamed of happiness that he was going to be a parent. And even her family, Jonas' family, could not be more happier to have a grandson, or at least a granddaughter soon. They didn't know exactly if they were going to have a boy or a girl, because they both wanted to be surprised. But just in case, they had to pick one boy name and one girl name, just in case if they had, well, either of them. And then the day came when their baby is born, and turns out to be a daughter, which they named Arrow Feathers. Even when Arrow Feathers was very young, she was very intrigued to learn more about her father's side of the family, or at least where that part of the family came from, and that meant that she spent some time in Griffstone with her godmother, Gabby. She was very interesting to learn more about the Griffins' culture, but also she spent a lot of time with her grandparents in Yakistan. She actually was so intrigued. She embraced both sides of the cultures as part of her own, even better she lived her family back in Ponyville. Gallus had actually moved back to Ponyville to be with his family, but was still captain of the Royal Guard. He came back to Canterlot to train the new recruits or have their major training programs or sort of things. But that meant that he still loved his family. Even Arrow Feathers spent a lot of time with her mother while her father was away. She was actually very close to both of them. But there was one thing that both had actually, all of them had in common. And that was family. Even if Gallus was an orphan, which his daughter was announced no to later on, but that it meant that he had nothing to do with being alone. He told his daughter that even he was alone back home in Griffithstone, but now he was happy to have a wife, a daughter, and especially most of all, a family that he cares so much about. But there was just one thing that Arrow Feathers had improved most of all, and that was her strength and speed. She had inherited her strength from her mother, but the speed from her father. And that meant she was really brave as most. Because one time, when she was only 12, she saved one of her friends who were stuck in a hole in the near every forest. Because they were just walking around when suddenly this ground where they stopped stepping down to collapsed under her. It turns out there was a very old hole that had just been covered mostly in sand over time. But she was really much interested in all of this. She must save her friend, and her friend was so happy that she was there that day. She always be there for her friends no matter what happens. And one day, when she was about 20, she had decided she wanted to move to Yakistan, not permanently, but for only time being, because she wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to teach more about the Yak culture. Even after all of this, she actually then moved back to Ponyville when she only about a year later. Around the time, she had fallen in love with a stallion who lived in Ponyville, and they actually got married after being dating for only 4 years. But many of her friends and family asked what would she want to do as an adult. And it turns out she had been offered a position at this school of friendship by the head mayor, Starlight Glimmer, to be the new gymnastics teacher. And that surprised her parents because they had no idea about it. But she had given them a show how to be a teacher, and both of them were surprised, and she was really good at it because she told both her parents were her role models, her idols, and that surprised them. Even though, but there was something else that happened. 2 years after that she had been married, she had twin daughters, and her husband was so happy. And only about when the twins were 4 years old, they had a third child, a son. Even then, her family were just happy. But the most of all, both Gallus and Yona could not have been more happier to be grandparents to three grandchildren. But most of all, happy to have a family of their own. And that's how Yona and Gallus found a true love, got a big family. The end.